Before starting the installation, make sure that there is no voltage on the connection cables. Activities related to installation, connection and adjustment should be performed by a qualified electrician who has read the operating instructions and the functions of the device. Operating mode, 6th. Time impulse, triggered by a rising edge. Powered system after receiving trigger impulse as rising edge. Switches the relay on, and counts down the set time. After the T2 time has elapsed, the relay switches off. The duration of the trigger impulse is not relevant. Operating mode, 7th. Time impulse, triggered by falling edge. After the disappearance of the trigger impulse in powered system, by falling edge, switches on the relay, and begins to count down the set time. After the T2 time has elapsed, the relay switches off. Next, disappearance of triggering impulses. During the countdown time, doesn't measure time from the beginning. The system is therefore non-retriggerable. Operating mode, 8th. Delayed switching on, and off. Powered system after receiving trigger impulse. As rising edge. Remains switched off. And simultaneously, begins to count down the time T1. After elapsing this time, the relay will be switched on. By the disappearance of the trigger impulse. As falling edge. The system counts down the time T2. By the disappearance of the trigger impulse. As falling edge, the system counts down the time T2. Then, switches off the relay. Once the impulse duration is shorter than the time T1. The relay will be activated for the T2 time only. Operating mode, 9th. Bistable relay with time limit. Powered system after receiving trigger impulse as rising edge. Switches on the relay. And counts down the T2 time. The relay is switched off when the next trigger impulse occurs. As rising edge, or after the time T2 elapses. Once such an impulse does not occur, The duration of the trigger impulse doesn't have any influence to the system operation. Operating mode, 10th. Time impulse triggered by a rising edge, with delayed switch off. Retriggerable. Powered system after receiving trigger impulse as rising edge. Switches the relay on after the disappearance of the trigger impulse. As falling edge. The time, T2, is counted down. Then, the relay will be switched off. Next show up of the trigger impulse during T2 countdown causes to start the entire sequence from the beginning. Operating mode, 11th. Time impulse triggered by rising edge, with delayed switch off. Non-retriggerable. Powered system after receiving trigger impulse as rising edge. Switches the relay on after disappearance of the trigger signal. As the falling edge. The T2 time counts down. Then, the relay will be switched off unconditionally.